Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We are in Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis today. A little bit past the half point of there in Amud Beis. Heicha koi, 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Zuhi mitzvah saseh sheba migdash she'ein chayav aleh. This is a mitzvah saseh. We're talking about somebody who's nitma ba'azara and he's there kadesh tachavoya. Then he's chayiv a carbon oil of a yored. So now the Mishnah says, Zuhi mitzvah say shemigdash she'ein chayav aleh. So where's this heicha koi? Where's this line coming in here? What are you going on? The ka'amr zuhi, this. What's this? So the Gemara says Hasam Koi. The Tan is going on a Mishnah in Horius. We never would have known this without the Gemara. Oh, we're getting there soon. Mirza Shem Raki says. Kaval, we're excited. Hasam Koi, Ein Chayovin, Alasei, Valoisasei, Sheba Mikdash. The Mishnah says that the Sanhedrin, who mislead the Tzibur, mistakenly paskening that they can violate Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav. So they have to bring, usually, when they mislead a tzibur, b'shoigig, they have to bring a kapara. It's called a par halam davar shel tzibur. So here the Mishnah says in Horius, in chayoven alasei va'aloisas sheba mikdash. That Sanhedrin is not mechuyev to bring that par halam davar shel tzibur if they made a mistake with regard to a mitzvah sasei or a mitzvah loisas sheba mikdash. It's very ambiguous. Very unclear exactly which mitzvah says the Mishnah is talking about. But that's the Mishnah Horius. It's an ambiguous statement. By the way, why don't they have to bring a parhalam davar shel tzibur on a say in loisa shel migdash? Once we find out which one it is, I'll tell you why. Ve'em mivian asham tali. And they don't also bring an asham tali. What's an asham tali? Asham tali means if you're not sure if you did an aveira, right? Safek chaylev, safek shuman, you're not sure which one you ate, so you can't bring a chatas kvua, because chatas kvua is for a definite avera. So yeah, you bring an asham talui. So anytime anytime you have a suffix, a yachid has a suffix, whether he's over on this loisasei and asei, sheba migdash, you also don't bring an asham tali. Sanhedrin doesn't bring an aparam davar shel tzibur, and the yachid doesn't bring an asham tali. Aval chayovin alasei v'aloises shebenida. Umavi an asham tali alasei v'aloises shebenida. But an asei and loises of nida, then they would bring a param davar shel tzibur, and the yachid bring an asham tali. So now our Mishnah is coming to teach us like a pirish on the Mishnah Horius. V'ka'amar zuhi mitzvah say shav migdash eich yavan Allah. You know which mitzvah say and loisa say. Sanhedrin don't have to bring a param davar shel tzibur if they misled the tzibur b'shoigig in the mikdash. If they paskined on this halacha that they could be shoya, let's say b'chdei shtachavo, even though they became tamei. On tumas mikdash v'kdasha, you don't have to go out right away. Let's just say that's what Bezdin said. So they don't have to bring a param davar shel tzibur on that. Why not? Because a param davar shel tzibur is brought only if a yachid would bring a chatas kavua on that shaygig. So anytime there's a chatas kavua on the shaygig, then if Sanhedrin misleads the tzibur in that kind of avera, then they bring a param davar shel tzibur. But we know by Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav there is a carbon oil of a yored, so you need carbon. So for that reason, Sanhedrin doesn't bring a param davar shel tzibur either, and you don't bring an asham tali. Even a yachid who's besupik, whether he's over on that avera, doesn't bring an asham tali. So the Gemara, now that we're talking about Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav, because we're saying this is the mitzvah sasei loisas sheba mikdash that they don't have to do param davar shel tzibur. Now let's finish up the next line, and the Mishnah Taka says over here, ve'eze mitzvah sheba nida shechayavan alel, right? Which one is the mitzvah sasei sheba nida that you are chayav at param davar shel tzibur, right? Which is the ambiguous statement in Horius. For that, our Mishnah says, hay mishamish and atahayra va'amru le'nitmesi upirish miyad. Right, a person is mishamish with a tahira, and she says nitmesi. So if he's pirish miyad with an eiver chai, then he's chayiv. Why? Mipnei sheitziyosa no aloi can be yasai, because the yitzia is also a hana like bia. So Mamela, you are chayiv to bring. You're chayiv to bring a param davar shel tzibur. Let's just say, or an asham tali if you're mesupik. Let's say Bezdin was was mistaken in that psak halacha, and they said that no problem, you can be pirish miyad. Let's say that's Sanhedrin's mistake. Then they have to bring a pound of tzibur. That would be the kind of aveira mitzvah say shebenida shechayav allow. Okay, now the Gemara is going to get involved in this case of mashamash matahira, the pirish miyad. Itmer Abaya Omer mishmei Reb Chia barav chayev shtayim. Abaya says that in the case of pirish miyad, and when she says nitmesi, you're chayev two chatois. V'chein Omer Rava Omer Rav Shmuel bar Sheva Omer Ravuna chayev shtayim choda aknisa v'choda aprisha. You're chayev one on the knisa, on having tashmish altogether. The choda aprisha, one is the prisha with the aver chay. Hava be Rava. So Rava thought about it and asked, "B'mai, what would be the case?" Rabbi is saying you're chayev shtayim. What's that case? If you're going to tell me that they were mishamish, the somach to the time that she is used to seeing her dam nida, right? Like when her cycle was about to start again. Ubaman, who we're talking about? So now, the time frame is samach levesta, but the question is, who is this guy that has to bring the two chatois in such a case? If you're going to tell me it's talmid chacham, so bishlam knisa lechayev, I can understand why he brings a karb mechatas on the knisa, because ksover chelani levoil. He thinks, you know what? I can make it quick, and I can finish the bia before she sees dam. And so that is not considered a mazid. Hagam, you should be pirish from her because it's samach levesta, but it's only samach levesta. So you felt, you know what, I can get in a bia before she sees dam. And I guess he miscalculated. So for that, he's a shaygig. Ella prisha, amay lechayev. But for prisha, why should he be chayev? Achatos, mezidu. What do you mean? He should have waited until his aver goes limp. It's an aver mace, and he didn't. And he's a Talmud Chacham, he knows better. So that's amazing already. So how could that be the case of chayev shtayim? If it's samach leves Talmud Chacham, then you should only be chayev one, because on the prisha would be amazing. The iba ma'oretz, and if you're going to tell me we're dealing with an ma'oretz, the ma'oretz knows nothing. But he doesn't know that you have to be pirish samach levesta. He doesn't even know that you can't be pirish miyad with an aver chay. So this Amaretz is totally out for lunch. So he's totally out for lunch. Then it's the same Isser that he's being over twice on. So anytime it's Behelam Echad, you're being over on the same Isser twice, so you're eating two Kazaisim of Chaylev in one Helam, in one forgetful state, without learning the halacha in between those two Maisa Averis, you only chayev one chatas. So if we're Amaretz, you should be chayev only one chatas, because Behelam Echad, two Maisa Averis of the same lav. If it's Talmud Chacham, you should only be chayiv one also, because you're chayiv on the knisa, which you're a shogeg because you miscalculated the timing, and in the prisha you're already amazed because you knew better. You're a Talmud Chacham. So where is the Echetimtza? What's the case of chayiv shtayim of Abaye? Says the Gemara, ve'elo b'she'ein samach levesta. Must be that the name of Abaye, when he said you're chayiv shtayim, is a case of where she's not samach levesta. Now, let's unpack this. Uveman. Again, who are we talking about? If you're going to tell me we're talking about Talmud Chacham, v'lo yichad lo mechayev aknisa honest. He's not chayev b'chlal. Not even one chatas, because the knisa is an honest. Why is he an honest? Because it's not samach levesto. He didn't do anything wrong. He's mamish an honest, right? He never should have anticipated or expected this to happen. He's mamish an honest. So there's no chiv chatos on that. Aprisha. But once she says nitmesi, then avada, he knows he's a Talmud Chacham, then he's amazed. Then there's no chiv chatos for that either. In Iba Ma'oretz, and if it's talking about Ma'oretz, chadu the mechayev aprisha, then he's only chayev one chatas on the prisha. Right? Because he didn't know that you have to wait until the aver goes limp, till it's an aver mace. So on that, he is a shaygig. So he's only chayiv one. He's not chayiv in the knisa either, because he's an oinus, just like Talmud Chacham. But on the prisha, Talmud Chacham is amazed, And Ma'aretz we chayiv one. So again, even if he's saying it's einay samach levesta, shaloi b'shas vesta, it can't fit with chayiv shtayim, with the statement of chayiv shtayim. So Hadar Amar Rava, in the end, Rava said like this: when would you have a case of hamashamish hamatahira, and she says nitmesi, and you're pirish miyad? When would you have a case of chayiv shtayim? When would that be case? And what would that be?
Knisa, and they're both b'shaygi, right? Chayiv always means b'shaygi because it's chayiv chatas.
Chayiv chatas, right. Chayiv, right, exactly. We're talking about chayiv two chatos. Hadar Amar Rava la'olam b'samach levesta. Really, we're talking about samach levesta. U'b'talmid chacham, and we're talking about talmid chacham. If it's samach levesta and a talmid chacham, didn't we say earlier that that he should only be mechuyev only one? Right? So we said earlier only one on the knisa because he miscalculated. He said yichalani live oil, but on the prishi is already amazing. Says the Gemara, no, but talmid chacham lezu, but ain't talmid chacham lezu. He's talmid chacham in terms of knowing that he should have been pirish from his wife samach levesta. So so he had a shoygig because he miscalculated. He thought he could do it fast. So he's a shoygig on the knisa because he miscalculated, but he's also a shoygig on the prisha because he didn't know the halacha of not being pirish miyad. So half-baked Talmud Chacham. Yeah? Half-baked Talmud Chacham. And that's the case of Chayiv Shtayim. My Rava. So Rava says, I have two rayas, two mishnayas, and each one, you see there's a Chayiv Chatos on Knisa and on Prisha. Knisa Tanina, Prisha Tanina. Prisha Tanina, where do I have a mishnah? That a guy is pirish from his wife. Be'ever chai, he's chai v'chatos. How do I know that? Diktoni, you're mishamish amatahira. She's mishamish, he's mishamish amatahira, v'amrlet mesi, uperish miyad, chayev, he's chayev. So there you see that he's pirish. He's chayev on the prisha. That's one mishnah. Knisa, Tanina, I also have a mishnah that you're chai v'chatos on the knisa. What's the mishnah? Mishnah Nida? Nimtza al shaloi. If he found on his cloth, after he tried to clean himself, after Tashmish, he found dam on his bad, on his cloth, then Tumein v'chayovin b'karban. Then they're both Tamei and they're mechuyev v'karban chatas. So the Gemara says, my lav b'samach levesta. If you're mechayev them a karban chatas, when they found out afterwards that they're Tamei, why would they be mechuyev a karban chatas if they only found that afterwards, right? It's nimtza al shaloi. He found the dam on his cloth. Why should he be mechuyev a karban chatas? It's afterwards. Elamai, my love b'samach levesta. Teretz says, no. There's a mistake over here. They shouldn't have been together. They're mechuyev to be pirish from each other. It's samach levesta. The aknisa. And he decided, no, I can do it fast and get it in before the dam nida comes. So the Gemara says on that you take a shoygig, and therefore they're both tamei and chayav and bekarbon. So here you have a mishnah and nida on knisa that there's a chiv carbon on knisa as well b'shoygig.
That's cheshbon based on days, not on time. So he's saying it's like right before midnight that he's saying, I can.
It's a good shaila.
That's always days. We don't cheshbon all the time. I mean, there's a nice, so maybe 12-hour periods.
Right.
We definitely don't go more specific in 12-hour
periods.
Right.
In other words, you're saying.
Lots of where he thinks right before, I'm going to get it in now.
Right. What's the samach leves? That's a good kasha. I don't know.
There's the end of the.
That's a great kasha. In other words, what's samach leves? The monafshech. I mean, if you're in the aina, right?
Then don't do it.
Right.
Maybe it's 5 minutes before and then he thinks it could be that's the case.
Right. Let's see. What does Rashi say? Okay. Sorry, Ian. Really, I'll tell you the Mishnah is talking about where it's not samach levesta. Prisha, and really we're going on Prisha. The chiyuv is because he's pirish be'ever chai. V'chitem Prisha lamali. Why do you need a second Mishnah to tell you that if he's pirish miyad he's chai v'chatas? Why do you need that? We already said it. Tatanale, our Mishnah already said that pirish miyad is chayiv. Why do we need a second Mishnah nida? No, there's a chiddush there. Nimtza al shalah. That if they found the blood on her body, on her cloth, then Tamein besafik upturin menakarbin. Then you tell me besafik upturin menakarbin. Why? Because it could be that she found it la'achar tashmish. Right? Between the Gemara Tashmish and when she checked herself, that's when she was Peiros Nida. So Mamela, you'd be potter from a carbon if it's Nimtza al Bat Shalah, and that's a Chiddush. V'ayd the boy lemisna Nimtza al Shalah, since we want to tell you the Chiddush that if you found the blood on her cloth, that's why we mentioned that case. Tananami Nimtza al Shalah, we mentioned the case of Nimtza al Shalah. But really, the case over here, when he's Pirish be'ever chai. Why need it again? Because in the seifa of that case, there's a chiddush of nimtza al shalah, you're pater min hakarbon. That's why we repeat it. So you still don't have a raya from anywhere that there's a chiyuv chatas on knisa. Amale Ravina l'Ravadi mi matzis la'okma alahi b'shaloi samach levesta v'aprisha. What are you going to tell me? That's loy samach levesta and aprisha, that's the chiyuv chatas over there, because you're pirish be'ever chai v'nimtza ktani. The case over here, the wording in the Mishnah is nimtza. Right? He found the dam, nimtza. He found the dam suddenly on his badika cloth. V'nimtza lebasar achi mashma. Always nimtza sounds like it happened afterwards. V'i aprisha, and if you're going to tell me the case is that she said nitmesi b'shas nasa they were having bia, then me'ikara ki parish lei me'ikara avele yediyah. Right away, melakatchila, when he was being pirishing before he checked on the bad, right? It's not nimtza. Right away, she said she was tummy, so it's right away. So the word nimtza doesn't sound like we're dealing with a case of prisha, because if it's prisha, it's not nimtza. It's not nimtza al bat shalai. He already knew it. So must be it's a case of knisa. We do have a raya from that Mishnah that by a case of knisa you're chai v'chatas. Amalei Rava tzayis ma'idika Amar Rabach. He said to Rabbi Masna, you should believe and listen to what your Rebbe Ravina is telling you. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Masna said, no. Heicha otzis. How could I accept this at face value? The Tanya Allah, didn't we learn in a brisa on that Mishnah of Nimtza, al Bat Shaloi, didn't we learn on that? Zuhi mitzvahs asay shebanida, shechayovan oleo. This is a mitzvah asay by nida that you're chayav achatas. Ve'im isa, mitzvahs loisasehi. If it's true that it's knisa, by knisa there is no asay. It's only a loisaseh. So I can't accept the akimta that Mishnah is talking about a case of knisa, and you have a raya that knisa, you're mechuy v'chatas on knisa. No, because the brisa on the Mishnah says, Zuhi mitzvahs asay shebanid shechon v'chatas. And that's not a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah saying knisa. Only on prisha there's not saying lois asay. So it has to be prisha. Amalei. So Rav said, Ita nisa. If you're going to learn that brisa, then you have to nagiyat chaser utni hachi. You have to insert the missing words, and you have to read it this way: Zui mitzvahs lois asay shebanid shechayav v'noleo. This is the case which is knisa, which is a mitzvah lois asay that you chayav v'chatas on. And that's it. And that's the missing case. So in other words, Taka, there are two cases. The way the Bryce explains the Mishnah, you have to insert those words of Zui mitzvahs loisase shabani shechiyav and then separate the asay, and the asay is going on prisha because prisha does have an asay. So bottom line, so far, we do have two Mishnayos. One Mishnah is teaching us that you're chayav v'chatas on ha'pirish be'ever chai, even if it's loy samach levesta. And one Mishnah is teaching you that you're chayav v'chatas if it's samach levesta on knisa, and you miscalculated the time thinking that you could do it before she sees the dam. Says the Gemara, Omar Mar. We just learned in Pirish miyad chayiv that if he's pirish miyad, he's chayiv. Heicha ovid. So what else should he do? If he's not pirish miyad, what should he do? So he shouldn't be chayiv chatas. Omer Avinu Shmei Derav Noyetz Eser Tziparnov Bakarka Achi Yamas, he should stick his 10 toenails into the karka. Fingernails or toenails?
I think fingernails, though.
And until the Aver dies, v'tuve, and good for him if he's able to be Aymed ben Esayin, and he's Zoicha to be Koivish as Yetzahara, and he's not Pirish be'Aver Chai, tuve. Then wonderful Ashrei Loi. Omer Rava Zoyse Meres, Weiss Dois, from the Mishnah, HaMeshamish Meis Ba'arayis Potter. If somebody's Meshamish Arayis with an Aver mace, then he's Potter. Why? Because you see in the Mishnah's Eitzah is that Mishnah's Pirish Miyad is Chayev. Weiss Dois, if it's Pirish Be'aver mace, he's not Chayev. Why? Because Be'aver mace, it's not called a Maisa Tashmish. So that means that a Meshamish Be'aver mace, another Arayis, he's not Chayev because it's not called a Maisa Tashmish. These are Gedai to Chayev, Hachamai time a Potter. You're going to tell me if it's Chayev and Aver mace, so why is he Potter over here? So you want to tell me, you can tell me Shem the Onasu, because he's an Oinus, right? Because he didn't know that she was Tmeya until he was already in the middle of the Biyah. So he Onasu, and if he's Takan Oinus, ke Pirish Miyad Namini Potter Onasu. So even if he's Pirish Miyad, he's an Oinus. Because at the time she became Tummy, he's already inside. So the answer is, it's not because he's an Oinus. That's not the reason why Be'aver Mace is Potter. Nothing to do with an Oinus. Be'aver Mace is Potter because it's not Nechshav Maisa Tashmish. That's what Rav is saying. Zoysa Meres, I see from here that Hamashamish Be'aver Mace Ba'arayis is Potter because it's not called a Maisa Tashmish. That's Rav's Shita. Omrli Abaye says, no, not so fast. The Oila Memelach, Hamashamish Mace Ba'arayis Chayev. Even if Hamashamish Mace Ba'arayis is Chayev. V'hachamai time a Potter. So why does the Mishnah differentiate between Pirish Miyad or not? What's the difference then? If he's anyways chayiv with an Aver mace, so why should he have to wait until the Aver goes limp? He's an honest. Then how are you going to tell me then he's also an honest? Teretz is, even if it's miyad, he's also an honest. Teretz is no shahayla lifresh b'anam moetes upirish b'anam aruba. Different levels in honest, right? I mean, there's an honest and then there's an honest. There's an oinus which you take advantage of. You say, I'm an oinus, and you'll have a nom aruba, and there's an oinus of a nom oetis. So the Mishnah is differentiating and saying that even though you're taking an oinus, you became tamei once you're in the middle of the bia, still make sure to be pirish by nom oetis and not by nom aruba. And if you do, then you're chayv achatos on the nom aruba. So we have a very fundamental machlekes Rav and Abaye whether hamishamish meis ba'arayis, that is Potter or Chayiv, whether Meshamash Meis B'arayis has a din of Maisa Tashmish. Omar l'Rabbi Bar Chana la'Abaye. So Rabbi Bar Chana said to Abaye, whoa, if you're going to tell me that even a Meshamish Be'aver Meis is a Maisa Tashmish, if so, Metzinu Arucha Uktsara Benida. Then we find the case of Arucha Uktsara by a Nida. Why? Because if you have to wait till the Aver dies, then that's Arucha, that's a Derech Arucha. And then Derech Arucha is Pater. And if you're Pirish Miyad, meaning quickly, so that's Ktsara, right? That's, you're not waiting, that's Ktsara, that's Be'aver Chai, is Chayev. So why is the Mishnah only differentiate between Arucha and Ktsara only by Migdash, but not by Migdash? By Migdash we said in our Mishnah, right, that between Arucha and Ktsara you have a door that's farther away. Don't take the door that's Arucha, take the door that's Ktsara, right? Or differentiate Arucha Ktsara. Differentiate Arucha Ktsara also over here. So by the way, according to Rava, this is not a kasha. Why? Because Rava holds that a Meshamish Be'aver Mace is not a Maisa Tashmish at all. Right? You're not doing anything wrong. Right? It's mamish not Maisa Tashmish. So it's not that you are in a matzav of an isser and you're just taking a shorter route out versus a longer route out. That would be parallel to Tumas Mikdash V'Kedosha, where you're tome in the azara, you're in a matzav of an isser, and you're differentiating Ktsara and Arucha. So according to Abaye, that Aver Mace is also a Maisa Tashmish, just as Aver Chai is. So then you could differentiate Ktsara and Arucha because you're in a matzav of an Isser, take the shorter route, or don't take the shorter route in terms of somebody who's Mishamash Benida, and take the longer route. But then it makes sense to differentiate Arucha Ktsara. So Gemara says, why doesn't the Mishnah differentiate Arucha Ktsara here also? Elam Shem Deloy Dami. Teretz is because it's not similar to Tumas Mikdash Vekadashav. It's a very different Arucha and Ktsara. Arucha Dahacha, Ktsara Dahasam. The Arucha over here, right, is what patters you. You wait until the Aver dies down, that's what patters you. That's Ktsara Dahasam. That would be equivalent to Ktsara Dahasam. So it's not consistent. So that's why the Mishnah doesn't make that chilek. Arucha Dahasam, Ktsara Dahacha. Arucha Dahacha, Arucha Dahasam, which means that you be chayiv if you take the longer route in Tumas Mikdash Vekadashav by Nitim Babazara, that's Ktsara Dahacha. That would be the chiyav by Ktsara over here, by Pirish Be'ever Chai. So since the Aruch and Ktsara don't line up in both cases, where they're both Aruchas chayiv and both Ktsaras are pater, that's why we don't differentiate it in the same Mishnah. Maskef Ravun Ber Nasan, Amiyamar Abaya Onasu. So Ravun Ber Nasan asks the following question: did Abaye Taka say that a person is a Pirish Be'ever Mace? He's an Oinus Alma B'Sheloi Samach Levesta Kamrinan. So you see that we're talking about where it's not Samach Levesta. Why do we say it's not Samach Levesta? Because if it's Samach Levesta, then you're not an Oinus. If it's Samach Levesta, then you'd be a Shaygig. If Abaye is calling it an Oinus, that means that it can't be Samach Levesta, because Samach Levesta would really classify the Prisha as a Shaygig, because that's part of the miscalculation, right? Because you should have known better. Bein aknisa u bein aprisha. So if Abaye is labeling this Aver Mace, being Pirish Be'ever Mace as an Oinus, then al karcha chaloimer that we're dealing in a case of loy samach levesta. Because if it's samach levesta, then you'd be a shaygig. Asks the Gemara, v'Abaye de Omar chayev shtayim, but Abaye it can't be. Why? Because Abaye said in our Mishnah that you're chayiv two chatois, one on the Knisa and one on the Prisha. In order to be chayiv on the Knisa, alma b'samach levesta askin, and you need to have samach levesta. So it's a contradiction about, because that's the only case you be chayiv chatas on the Knisa, because that's the miscalculation, right? It's samach levesta and you made a mistake. So if you're going to be chayiv this guy on two chatois, so the only way you can be chayiv on two chatois is if the case is samach levesta, because otherwise you can't be chayiv on the Knisa. But then how can Abaye call the Aver Mace an Oinus? It's not an Oinus, it would be a Shaygig. And the Mishnah is Machalik in Pirish Miyad or the Aver Mace, wouldn't be no chilik. Be no chilik. Right? It would be no chilik. If Abaye says the pshat of the Mishnah is the chilik of Aver Chai and Aver Mace is because of an Oinus, must be it's loy samach levesta, but that doesn't fit because Abaye said in the Mishnah you chayiv shtayim, and if it's chayiv shtayim, it's samach levesta because otherwise it's not chayiv on Knisa. So that is the contradiction in the Gemara on Abaye. So the Gemara says, no, don't be so quick. Really, we're talking about in our Mishnah b'shaloi samach levesta, and that's why there's a chiluk in Aver Chai and Aver Mace, because Aver Mace is an Oinus, and it's loy samach levesta, right? So that's an Oinus. So if it's haki b'chayiv shtayim, if it's loy samach levesta, then you can't be chayiv on the Knisa. And the Mishnah says, and Abaye said on our Mishnah that you chayiv shtayim. Says the Gemara, ki itmer de Abaye ba'alma itmer. No, Abaye didn't say chayiv shtayim on our Mishnah that's mechalik with the pirish be'ever chayiv be'ever mace. Abaye said you chayiv shtayim on a different case, not on the case of our Mishnah. Really, our Mishnah is talking about b'shaloi samach levesta, and that's why there's a chiluk in Aver Chai and Aver Mace. Right? Because you're not a shoygig on the Aver Mace, you're an Oinus. And that can only be if it's loy samach levesta. Because if it's samach levesta, then you're a shoygig on that too. So how can you be chayiv shtayim if it's loy samach levesta? So what about the Knisa? You can't be chayiv on the Knisa if it's loy samach levesta because mamash an Oinus on that. Teretz is, Abaye said chayiv shtayim on a different case. Altogether, Abaye said a chayiv shtayim on a case of samach levesta, and in that case there wouldn't be a chiluk in Aver Chai and Aver Mace. Okay, so that's that. Boy menei Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosi ben Lakunya, Reb Shimon ben Yosi ben Lakunya. Azhara leboyel nida menayim and atayra. How do I know that it's usher to be boyel and nida min atayra? So right away, shakal kala, Reb Shimon took a piece of dirt and pasak bay, and he threw it at him. It says, Azar leboyel nida? This is what you're asking me? Vel isha benidas tumasa leisikrav. It's the first pasuk in the Torah. Elo, Rabbi says, oops, let me be more specific in my question. Azhar lemeshamish amatahoyru v'amru lenitmesi dulenifresh miyad minalan. How do I know this halacha that if somebody all of a sudden realizes b'shas he's meshamish that she became tamei, how do I know that he shouldn't be parish miyad? That's the shaila. Amr chizki amr kra usehini dasa olav. It says usehini dasa olav afilu b'shas nidasa tehei olav. That even b'shas the nida, b'shas tumas anida olav means the dina nida is upon him and he's not allowed to be parish miyad. Ashkhan asay. So that I see an asay on that, on the Chiyuv Prisha, loisese manolan, is there a mitzvah loisese, that he's not allowed to be parish miyad? How do I know that? Amar Papa Makra, loisikrav. Loisikrav nami loisifreshu. It says loisikrav legalois. El isha benidas tumasa loisikrav. Loisikrav also means loisifresh, don't be parish. How do I know that? T'chsiv ha'imrim krav eilecha al tigash bi ki kadashticha. Yeah? So, kiruv also means a person being makarev to himself, become closer to yourself. So that's an act of prisha, right? By pulling away means I'm being makarev myself to myself, and that's also included in Lysikrav, and that's how I know you're not to be pirish from Anida. Be'ever chai. So the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, weiter, a brisa, v'zartem es b'nei Yisrael metumasam. You should separate as b'nei Yisrael metumasam, Omer Rabbi Yoshi mekan azor l'bnei Yisrael, sheyifreshu and sheseyan samach lavestan. They should be pirish from their wives, samach lavestan, v'kama, how much time, Omer Rabba Oina. That's a yom and a laila, to be pirish and Oina from your wife, samach lavesta, when she is near her cycle of seeing again. Wow, we mentioned Rav Shimon ben Yochai. How many times in Shas does it spell out Rav Shimon ben Yochai? As of our recording today, it's like Baimer. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Kol she'enoi pirish me'ishtei samach lavesta, fila havin labonim kevnei Aaron mesim. Tichsiv v'zart v'zvam t'masam v'adav v'adasav v'samach lei achrei mois shnei b'nei Aaron. So you see the two parashiyos are next to each other, juxtaposed, to tell you that even if he has bonim kibnei Aaron, they'll end up dying.
Charei Mois also is last week's parsha.
Yeah. Somebody does be, who is parish, is careful, he has bonim zecharim, t'chsiv l'havdil ben atom ben atar, v'samech le ishik is azriya v'yol de zachar. Shimon Levi Omer havdil bonim v'ruin la'ira. They will be able to paskin rabunim, t'chsiv l'havdil ben akoyz ben choyl ben atom ben atar, l'hoyrus is b'nei Yisrael. The Havdalah between Tom and Tyre leads to Lahiras as Bnei Yisrael. Amar B'chi Rabbi Yoel Gold Mavdil alayai b'matzah shabusis. Havdil on bottom of Zacharim d'chsiv lahavdil ben akoydish u ben achoy l'ksiv hasam lahavdil ben atom ben atar v'samach lei isha ki sazriya v'yol d'zachar. Shimon Levi Omer bonim ru'in le'ira d'chsiv lahavdil v'lahiras. Omer ben Yoman bar Yefes, Omer ben Lozer, Kol Makadish is Atzim b'shas tashmish. Anyone who is noig b'tznius b'shas tashmish, having l'bonim zecharim shnemer iskadishtem v'sim kadoshim b'samach lei isha ki sazriya v'yol zachar. So you see clearly from this Gemara, the Gemara is giving advice on how to have a zecharim. Are zecharim better than a kevis? You have to ask Rav Chisda. We had Rav Chisda a few times. And Baba Basra at the end of the first parak, we had him in Sanhedrin as well, I believe. No, do we have him in Sanhedrin?
There's a machlekes in Test Zion and Baba Basra, and then it says later in the Masechta it says Bas Tchila Simin Yafel.
Ah, it's in both of Baba Basra. Right. Raki does it. Wow, Zichru. Baba Basra both. He says he prefers Nekevas, but Al Kaponim, these are brachas for Zecharim. Okay, we'll stop over here. Mirz Hashem, we'll continue tomorrow. Weiter in Shas.